And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I am Michael DeLon. Today I'm here with Vladimir Baranov. Vladimir, thank you for spending some time with me today.
Thank you for having me, Michael. Glad to be here.
Well, you are welcome. It's going to be a fun conversation. So Vladimir is he's a serial entrepreneur. He has founded three different companies, had some exits from those, and today he's an executive coach for founders and technical leaders. And one thing I saw in your bio, I think it was Vladimir, that I do want to talk about sometime is you help. One of your expertise is, if that's a word, is to transform ideas into businesses, kind of that 0 to 1 approach that was written about. So love that. So I want to talk about that because I'm an idea generating factory and I might have more businesses in my mind than I know. But as we get there, let's just jump into the deep end and tell us, Vladimir, how in the world did you get doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, well, when you say things about me, it sounds so much better when I say about myself. So maybe you should keep talking. But in a retrospect, though, I think my story is a story of gravitating towards places of greater impact. Kind of
Mhm.
subscribe to the theory of Archimedes said that if you have a lever long enough and if you have a pivot point in the proper location, you can move a lot of things. I started out as an electrical engineer, computer scientist, building robotics, and by geographical happenstance, ended up in finance. Spent about 8 years building different trading systems, but eventually realizing that large banks, large companies are not uh, impactful enough for me, where I felt like a lot of my effort was lost in the noise, and I wanted to make sure that whatever I was doing was impactful to the bottom line or had certain outcomes which could be measured. Switched over to a startup. We started a company after MBA in peer-to-peer lending. That was my first true experience on my own. That didn't really go well, and we had to shut it down after 6 months. But during that time, I met a few other people who wanted to start a wealth management SaaS, which took off, and we grew the company from 2 people to 150 over 7 years, eventually selling it to a large financial institution. So I did get what I wanted from with the first step for getting more impact and my work being noticed and kind of taking full ownership of everything that I produced. But I felt that field of finance did not resonate with me completely, and I thought like perhaps I can find a different place where to apply my skills. And I remembered my robotics things that I've done in university, and also my aerospace affection, and I switched
Mhm.
into aerospace industry. For about 4 years, I was there, and we built satellites, wrote code, launched those satellites, got government grants and government contracts, which was a fantastic experience. But also, while I was doing something impactful at a place which I really felt like was almost like a dream factory, um, the impact was a little bit narrow. Space markets are not terrestrial markets; they're still very small, and a lot of
Yeah.
projects that you work with are pretty much subcontracting to the government.
Oh,
As excited as Blue Origin and SpaceX launches are, they're still limited to a very few unique individuals on this planet who can actually call the shots on what exactly you want to execute for the planet. And that kind of led me to start thinking, what are the best ways I can actually make the biggest impact possible? And I've met a lot of executives over my career. I met a lot of startup founders and technologists, and I thought, what if I help them? They already are doing a lot of impactful things on this planet, and if I help them be impactful, I feel then my effort gets multiplied too. And this is the
mm.
journey that I started on with my executive coaching career.
That's very cool because you're really going back. It's interesting. You're going back to the whole Archimedes thing. How can you get a
Well,
greater
I
level?
wasn't alive back then, but it's a good.
Yeah, you're trying to leverage more to get a greater impact, and you've found that in coaching, which is really cool. And you work a lot with founders and technical founders, SaaS companies, things of that nature, which makes sense based on the background that you just shared with us.
Yes.
And one of the things you said, I think it was on LinkedIn or somewhere, is that you help them find clarity.
Yes.
Let's talk about that and
Yeah.
why is it so elusive? And
Yeah.
then why is it so very important? Let's talk about that
Yeah.
span on that clarity.
Yeah. It's a good one. Um, I think it starts with a first ever narrative that I will start far and then I'll bring it close. I think it starts with a narrative of what it means to run a company, or start a company, or kind of go into a new venture. And a lot of biographies, autobiographies, media stories are extremely linear about how people reach their destinations. Somebody had an idea, they work really hard on it, and something comes out, and they're freaking fantastic. Everything is awesome, but they omit a lot of details about doubt and questioning and m- making bad decisions, and then making good decisions, and then making bad decisions again, because plethora of those events do not make a good story.
Mm.
And unfortunately, people who have not done any startups before, and including myself early on, I subscribe to those notions that, like, I just have to work hard enough to reach something. But what happens when you find a business or you start a new venture, you run upon challenges which you have not seen in your life before. And
Yep.
that doesn't mean that you're not smart enough to solve them. It's just going to take a long time to solve them. And what happens is that all of a sudden you have 20 to 30 to 50 different learning curves that you're on. And that becomes incredibly overwhelming because not every learning curve has the same rate of ascent. Not every learning curve actually the right one to be on, and that sort of jumbles your prioritization and jumbles your mind. And without kind of having a mentor or having a coach on your side to kind of take those things apart and help you prioritize in your context, it becomes very overwhelming. And I empathize with those who are going with that journey, and I have gotten through that journey myself a few times over. I'm also going through some of it now. I don't think that ever goes away. But the skills and experience that I picked up along the way help me now coach others to how get from that state of chaos to the place where things are a little bit more prioritized, a little bit more certain, at least for the near future.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. And you said a couple things in there that I want to tease out a bit because I think sometimes um, hiring a coach is put into the same category, at least mentally, I think it is, or emotionally, as hiring a counselor, right?
Hmm.
Not that either of those is wrong. In fact, they're very
Yeah,
healthy.
yeah, yeah,
But it's you're going to as you ascend the ladder of entrepreneurship or whatever you call it. You're right. You're going to get hit with different things that you've never experienced before, and you can buckle up and I'm going to tackle this, or you can reach out to somebody and say, "You've been here. What's the pathway?" Is that kind of how you help people?
yeah. So I think this is also comes down to a little bit educating people on different ways of I guess consulting services, advisory services, coaching service, therapy services are slightly different, and not necessarily that some of those I can and cannot do, but it also a little bit of education on the space, given that we are all still very ignorant, I think, about how to address our own mental needs, whether they be abnormal or they're normal, but classifying and labeling those is really hard.
Mhm.
But I generally try to focus on mostly coaching and a little bit consulting and mentoring if that comes to it, but mostly
Yeah,
coaching. And coaching is an art of asking questions which help you clarify and reach that point of clarity. Well, what exactly do you want to do with the thing that you started?
yeah,
Because the once you figure out the outcomes and we clarify those, then the steps in between become a little bit clearer.
yeah,
Once we figure out your own values, once we figure out your own inclinations and skills, then it's much easier to make decisions going forward. Now,
yeah,
as far as like figuring out whether or not there is certain therapeutic aspect to coaching, I think it is. If we are leaning into maybe perhaps life questions, like what kind of
mhm,
legacy we want to leave in the future. But through my coaching training, generally the line that we draw is that therapy talks about the past and how you can become who you are now, and coaching is about the future from where you're going to be from the point now going forward. But
yeah.
definitely coaching is not discussing any sort of mental pathology. And in case those situations come up, we do make a proper referral.
Right. No, and that's good. And what people need to understand is that it's it's healthy, it's good to have mentors, coaches. We all need them. There's nobody who's
Yes.
out there doing it themselves. And I love when I talk with people and they're like, "Yeah, but look at Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and Bill Gates," and I'm like, "Yeah, you just don't see the team around them. You don't see their mentors, their coaches, their masterminds. They never talk about that for some reason
Yeah.
because they always look like what's the one man show who's just so brilliant. He whatever he touches turns to gold. Well, no, he has a whole factory of
Well, maybe
miners.
not gold, maybe dodgy.
That's great. So we all need people around us who've been where we want to go. I love your clarity because I use three words in my business in with my clients. It's clarify and then simplify and then multiply. And what I find is a lot of business owners, tech leaders, a lot of them, they're not clear, so they can't simplify. They've got 17 things going on, and I think probably what I'm hearing you say is you help them ask the right questions to get the right destination to go, oh, I'm doing 17 things, but really if I did these three
Yeah.
really, really well, then the
Yeah.
rest of them are going to take care of themselves. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I think in the end, what it comes down to is benchmarking. Well, you're doing 17 things. How many things should you be doing? You're like,
Yes.
oh, I don't know. I should be doing. Why? So and that's where kind of self-awareness comes in, and we try to figure out, well, what should be a good benchmark for how many things you should be doing? What is
Yes.
your actual internal capacity for deep or shallow things? How can you reorganize them on your calendar? Are all of them necessary to accomplish? What outcomes are you trying to achieve? More is not a good outcome because then you can just drive yourself into craziness. Let's be a little bit more specific for the kind of goals that you want to set. You're
That's
not
right.
sure? Well, what do other people set for their goals? Are those good ones? Because one of the things the brain is really hard doing is like coming up with something from scratch. But we're
Right.
kind of okay looking at the menu and selecting some of this things that are good for us, for our business, for our outcomes.
That's right. Yeah. And I've got a great friend, Tom Ruich, who helps people with marketing and copywriting and things. And he says you should never start with a blank screen. He says you assemble great copy by doing just, taking pieces and parts and putting it together in the, just like setting goals. You can easily say, well, I would like to have that. And then the questions always come is like, well, why do you want that?
Yeah,
And do I really want that? And
yeah,
and those are the questions that you have to think about to find that clarity, especially when it comes to business. What are you trying to make happen? What impact do you want and why? What feeling is that going to give
right.
you so that you can do whatever it is that you're wanting to do, that
Yeah,
legacy part or whatever, right?
yeah. And then the technical leader says, say, but I don't want my feelings to drive me. I want my logic to drive me. Like, okay, that's a different kind of conversation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you work with a lot of tech leaders. Let's talk about this idea of nothing to something, right? Transforming ideas
Yes.
into tangible businesses. Talk about how do you help entrepreneurs, would-be entrepreneurs, come to you and work through that
Yeah.
aspect.
And I probably should update that copy. I actually work with people with pre-idea
Okay.
because the mechanisms of understanding your idea and other people's needs kind of come at that point, and they're a little bit easier because if you come a little bit biased with your own idea how great it is, and you kind of get locked in and you believe that's the greatest thing since the slice the bread. But
Yes.
if the market doesn't think so,
Yeah.
then you're in trouble. I know there are different narratives as far as like, hey, build the things which you like to solve, or the things if it solves the problem for you, then it probably solves for others. No, there's absolute truth for that. But for the past 15 years, there are mechanisms like customer discovery, which we could leverage either together or you're on your own, figuring out where the market actually has the most pressing needs, and then your solution to those needs becomes the idea that the market will actually pay for. Um,
Yeah.
Now, we pride ourselves on ideas, but unfortunately, not every idea is sticky. Now, it might be great when you wake up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. like, wow, that's an amazing thing. But
Yeah.
we're emotional creatures, and then when you wake up in the morning again, it's like, what a stupid idea it was. But I couldn't fall asleep. But as far as like taking the ideas from like nothing to something, does come down to like taking that idea, taking to the market and seeing where it goes without writing a single line of code. Because
Yeah.
technology in the end, it's automation of a business model. And if you're not building a business model first, if you're not the engineer of that, then you're kind of building the car without a blueprint. and
Yeah.
that car is not going to go anywhere. So this is
Yeah.
where I kind of helped set up the sequence of things that need to fall into place in order for your idea to fly, but also to quickly confirm that, hey, maybe this idea should not take flight because it's either too early, like Apple Newton, fantastic technological achievement, what came way too early for anything that the world was ready for, or
Right.
perhaps idea just doesn't have any wings at all.
That's right. Yeah, that's fascinating because I was searching the other day somewhere, I don't know where it was, and I saw this little flying car doohickey thing, and I looked at it, I'm like, now that's fascinating, and I actually think it's probably time for that, but they're on
Yeah,
the very 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 cutting edge, right? And
yeah,
they had better have enough money to stay around for about 5 years.
yeah,
It's a great concept,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
it's
I'd say it's entertaining. The great technology has two
yes,
things. It's either great art or a great product, and
yes.
the product is bought by the market, and our piece is just being looked at, and you
Yeah.
just get emotions around it.
That's right. Yeah. So you've got to be able to either have those ideas or maybe what I heard you say is a pre-idea. So people should
Mhm.
have conversations with you when they've got that stirring inside per se. Because the other thing that you said in there, and I hope people heard it, is you've got to build the business plan, the strategy first, and in your mind to go, okay, well, we're going to drop this product in here, but I need to know how to go from 3 people to 150 in
Yeah,
7 years.
yeah,
There's a lot to do just
yeah.
that, let alone the product, right?
Yeah, and I think at this stage we're also a lot more simplified. I think business plan is more associated now with more brick and mortar businesses, the ones which have been done before. Let's say you're starting a corner store or you're starting some sort of trinket store. That has been done before, and you can look up at different templates and put them together, and you know how to validate or not validate that need for in the market. When it comes to business model, it's just I know they sound very similar, but business model is usually a 1 or 2 pager that kind of separates all the different components of the business, where you put a hypothesis for each of the kind of boxes on that business model. It's called like business canvas. It's a thing if for our audience, you can look it up, where you break down your business into multiple chunks of how you think it's going to work, and then you go out and you start talking to prospective customers, validating each of those boxes, whether or not there's actually traction with that idea.
Interesting. So it's all this stuff that if you're like me listening to this, you're like, wow, this dude's a pretty smart dude. And it's because he's in not A, he's smart, but B, he's been around the block a few times. You've done some things, you've started businesses, you've grown businesses. I love the fact, honestly, that your first business uh, didn't grow, right? And I don't want to say it was a failure because it wasn't.
Well,
It was a learning experience, right?
of
And you
course. I mean,
and you,
I also didn't bring up like the other 10 businesses that didn't work out, but
well, and
you know,
but right, but I want you to in the future because I think so many times we never hear about
yeah, of
that. And it's like,
course.
oh, wait a minute. You're not just because not everything is, oh, I had this idea and I sold it for $10 million. Oh, there, I
Yeah,
can teach you to do the same thing. No, I
yeah,
can teach you how to fail miserably and learn from it. So the next time, and by the way, when you work with Vladimir, you probably won't have that many failures because he's already done it for you. And that's the beauty of working with somebody like you, Vladimir, is you can kind of look down the corridor and go, yeah, I've done that. If you go down that way, here's probably what's going to happen. Let's talk about that, right? Because when you're new, when you have a new idea or you've never accomplished at that level, you don't know what's coming, but
yeah,
you've been there. And that's how you help your entrepreneurs, your founders really harness what's going on in their head so they can have greater impact and achieve what they're wanting to achieve. Is that a good summary?
yeah. It's where very well put together. You hired. You can be my promoter going forward.
I can go promote you all day long. I tell you what, where if somebody's out there listening to this, where would they find you to get just to learn more about you to figure out if coaching with you is the right next step? Where should they go?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, my primarily place to find that is on my website. It's humaninterfaces.co. And I have a special link for anybody who's listening. If you add slash podcast, humaninterfaces.co slash podcast, then you'll be forwarded to a place to schedule a complimentary discovery session so we can find out what we can do together.
Excellent. I will make sure that that is in the show notes because my audience is entrepreneurs, right? They're busy running their businesses. So go number one. I think go back and re-listen to this with a new set of ears because Vladimir dropped a lot of great nuggets in here that will help you. But then reach out to him. Humaninterfaces.io/podcast. Is that correct?
.co.
Dot
.co.
.co.
Yeah.
.io. And it's going to
Oh,
be in the.
well, listen, the link is going to be the right one, so you're
It's. I
not
was going to
worried
say
about it.
I may get it wrong, but the link will be right. I trust me on that one. And see how he can help you gain some clarity so that you're going to have greater leverage in your future. Vladimir, this has been really a fun conversation. I appreciate you being here and taking all your not your knowledge, your experience, and your passion to make a greater impact in the world, and focusing that on other people. That's honorable. Thank you for doing that. Thanks for being my guest today on Experts Speak.
Appreciate the kind words, Michael, and it was a pleasure being here.